doing today, Paul?
I'm good. We're dealing with some challenges here in Los Angeles, but I'm doing okay.
That's good to know. And how are things on your side? How do you see the situation? I've seen in the news that it's gotten a little bit worse since they toned it down, but I've seen in the news that it's gotten worse a little over there.
Yeah, I feel fortunate. I live in Malibu and I'm evacuated. I have some friends who've lost their homes, so I feel grateful that my home is safe and I'm safe, and at least my area right now we're doing okay. And I can't say it's behind us because it's not yet, and we'll see what happens. So we're still in the middle of it. We'll see. The face of Los Angeles is going to change. That's for sure.
All my prayers on my side for yourself and for everybody in Los Angeles due to the situation. But as well today, we want to talk about your documentary that it's had the title right here. Pay Dirt, the story of Supercross. Off the bat, I want to know what inspired you to do this documentary, because you don't only talk about the sport, you talk about even the, I would say, big situations that happen behind the sports with big names. And as well, you talk about the writers that are like the privateers. You talk about writers that became legends. And as well, we got to talk with Jimmy Buttons, that he had a major accident as well. So you mixed in so much in this documentary now, and as well you have it narrated by Josh Brolin. What inspired you to bring all of these stories to fruition in this documentary?
Well, I decided I didn't want to tell a history, and we call it the story of Supercross, not the history of Supercross. But I went to a race and I was watching these guys fly through the air, and I started to ask about it, and I became mesmerized and entranced and amazed when I learned about the physicality, the mental demands. And I thought, these people are, drama is about what's at stake. And what's at stake here is people's lives and careers. And the thing is, the hook to me was, it looks so easy. Oh, there's a motor. Oh, they're sitting down. All you have to do, it appears, is twist the throttle. And then I started to learn about the complexity of the sport and how it's, your heart rate is 180 to 200 beats a minute for 22 minutes, which is more than boxing and more than soccer. So once I got hooked by, this is much more than it appears to be, then all these human stories started to come about. And then actually, Josh Brolin had a really important role in this movie, besides being the narrator. And we've worked together on other projects. I was kind of lost for a while, trying to find my way to how to put this movie together. And Josh was like, look, man, he's an experienced guy who's been through his ups and downs in life, and he has a new book out about that. He said, make the movie that's true to you. It's the story you want to tell. And if people like it, they do it. If they don't, they don't. But don't try to please people. Don't try to follow paint by numbers. And so with that inspiration from Josh, I said, I want to tell these human stories. And I saw it in these slices. And I felt like it was a pie. And if I just put one slice next to another slice, and then it would tell a whole picture, even though it wasn't a linear story from a timeline standpoint, I could create a patina that tells everything about the sport. So the fans of the sport would go, yes, this guy's captured what I love. And really, even maybe more importantly, people who weren't fans go, wow, this is a world that I want to know more about. And it's a world that's fascinating. And even if they never, ever again watch a race, they come to appreciate. So a guy like Jimmy Button, which is like both a tragic story and an uplifting story, had a horrible crash. And he said he was kind of an asshole as a human being. But after he went through what he went through, he became a better husband, a better father, and has actually reached out to create a whole foundation called Road to Recovery to help other athletes who have experienced the same thing. And some not as fortunate as him. There are guys in wheelchairs because that's the nature of this sport. And you've got a guy like Ricky Johnson, who had his tumultuous relationship with his father and the guy who injured him. So these are human stories. And I said, wow, this world. And here's the other thing. Nobody had really done this in this world before. It's been done in other sports. And we've had people who've seen the movie from the world of Supercross saying, thank you, Paul. And again, it's a little hard for me to say that. I just make it. It's up to you people to determine themselves. But we had one guy said, I've never seen the motocross guys cry before. I've never, Ricky Johnson has never told that story before. So as we were exploring the sport, these human stories came out, and I was happy to share them.
That's amazing. And how long did it take you to come with all of the footage? Because you have footage from way, way back when Supercross was just starting, or motocross, right? And
Yeah.
then you have modern, plus you have footage from those times when Supercross was really, really starting as a paid event sport. How long
Yeah.
did it took you to get all of this together?
This project took a long time, and we started right when COVID started, and that became a big challenge. My style is to bring people to a studio to do the interviews for most of them, and we couldn't get in a small studio with a lot of people in there. But searching for footage has always been a big part of documentaries. We had a still photographer who provided a huge archive, a guy named David Dewhurst, who has been around since the beginning. So it was a combination of stills and digging, calling people up. Do you have this footage? Finding home videos, going to the networks, and really searching really hard to find the footage. And then the other thing was to go out with my DP named Dave Warshauer and to say to him, look, I want you to capture that this is a world of dirt. And I want to capture tight shots. Not because TV is a very high angle that takes in all these guys. I want to be intimate. I want to capture something TV cameras don't capture. And so we went and spent a lot of time at the races, looking at seeing the tire, grab the dirt, the guy with the wrist, his feet, his hands, his eyes. So we wanted to make a cinematic, emotional experience as well as one that told people's stories. So it was a lot of pieces to put together.
How challenging was it to get those more intimate shots? Because we're talking about probably you guys were in a live event or a private event, but I imagine that was challenging. Were there any more challenges behind the big challenge?
Well, it was really challenging because many times the shot you want, where you want to get a sense of movement and dirt, you kind of have to put yourself somewhat in harm's way. And so we went to different spots, and I'm a very responsible filmmaker, but we said, okay, here's a calculated risk I'm prepared to take. I want to capture this guy going through a berm. And we said, okay, we're going to maybe place the camera. I would have spotters. Okay, let me know if something bad is going to happen here. Sometimes we use tricks where there were fences and we put the camera through a fence. So you're right there getting the action, but we were kind of protected. And there's also a lot of tricks where if the momentum is going around the outside of a turn and you're on the inside of the turn, you can get very close, but the momentum is going to be safe because they're going away from you. So there were ways to get the cameras in there close, using lenses as well, where you can really feel you're part of the action. But of course, I didn't want to get hurt and I didn't want my crew to get hurt. So it was finding a balance there. So part of it's understanding a sense of flow and movement where you can be and watching the race and going, I can see something happening where these three guys are battling and I'm not going to get in there. I'm not going to put myself where something could go wrong, and then finding other moments where I could get in the position. And we wanted you to feel you're part of that dirt world.
No, yeah. I felt it while I was in watching it and enjoying it. Now, wanted to ask, there's Jimmy mentions in my interview with Jimmy, he mentioned to me that there's a shot of his incident that he never got to see, and he got to see it in the documentary. Yep. Were there any moments throughout your research and throughout building this film's story? Were there any moments of Supercross that just kept you in a shock?
Well, watching the crashes, we didn't want to be, I didn't want to be gratuitous about that, because there's lots of crashes, but you have to show them. And, when you're sitting in an editing room and there's one crash in particular, the guy goes flying off the track and lands on the concrete. And the injury has actually affected that guy going forward. You want to show it, but you don't want to, we're not here to put a bunch of car wrecks out there. So looking through the footage and going, what's the responsible way to handle this? We want to show the stakes that these people are dealing with. I was actually surprised about Jimmy because I assumed he had seen the footage, but he literally had said he never wanted to look at it. And so it was when he watched it on the big screen the first time when we were at a film festival, he said it was very, very emotional. One of the other things we did, which I was nervous about, was some of the old footage is not that good. And some of the way these guys tell stories, we didn't have old footage to support it. So we intercut modern footage with old stories, and it worked beautifully because the emotionality of what they were talking about, we found a way to illustrate it, even if it wasn't the exact thing that we were seeing, because it brought it alive. So it was like making the footage feel like we were painting with dirt and energy and action was very, and that combination, which I think is what I hope is my signature as a filmmaker, is, in-depth emotional interviews combined with powerful cinematic images. And for the sport of Supercross, it had never been seen that way before. It's been filmed from television for many years, but nobody went and spent to race after race to find those little gems. And seeing it on the big screen is the way it really comes alive.
I completely agree. And I wanted to ask you, Paul, there is I think it's like a very small segment where you interview, I don't have his name on top
Mike
of my
Goodwin?
head, at jail. There's
Yes.
so what is the process to be able to get footage like that? Being the fact that he is in a in the state that he is, how was it? How was the process, or how difficult was it to be able to get at least those? I think it was like around 4 to 5 minutes of him
Yeah, it was
speaking about the
actually
situation.
it was actually very difficult. But the good news was, and by the way, the guy would call me up all the time. I still calls
Okay.
me. You get this phone call, hey, if someone's calling from the prison, do you accept these charges and so on? And he likes to talk. He's a very, very talkative guy, and he wanted to share his story. He also, and I'm not going to weigh in whether he's innocent or guilty. He was convicted, as you know, for double
Hmm.
homicide, no possibility of parole. And he's trying to make his case. And I go, look, Mike, I'm not here to adjudicate this. I'm not doing a crime story. But luckily, in the prison, they have a iPad system, but it was not that good. It kind of worked a little bit. So you see his image a little bit, but a lot of what you hear is his voice, because you can record it from the phone. And he would call a lot. And and the thing was, you wouldn't know when you were going to get a phone call. He would say, okay, it's going to be Tuesday, hopefully between 9 and noon, because he has to wait in line. And again, different times I'd have certain questions, and all of a sudden I'd be driving down the highway with my kid in the car or something, and the phone rings. The next, I'm talking to a guy in prison. And he liked to talk, but so it was challenging. The audio quality, you want beautiful stuff, but just to have some imagery of him, and his archival stuff, mentioned that before, getting the old footage of him as he was growing up and digging that footage out, that was a challenge to find that historically stuff. So, but it adds, you can't tell the story of Supercross without, you can argue whatever you want about the guy, and he'll tell you he wasn't a very nice guy. He claims he's innocent, of course. But he created the sport. I mean, he did come up with the idea of taking it from hill and dale and out in the country and bringing it into stadiums. There's no doubt that Mike Goodwin is the father of Supercross, and he deserves that credit, separate from what else he might have done in the world.
Yeah, I completely agree. And the other thing that comes to mind was, how was it working with Josh Brolin? You mentioned at first that he was a key part of the documentary, and how was that back and forth between yourself and Josh?
Of all the people I've worked with, and I've done some other stuff in Hollywood, because he's doing this voiceover as a passion project, he doesn't need to do it. And trust me, he's not getting a lot of money for doing this. This is a documentary thing. But because he cares so much about this sport, and we've done other movies together, it's really on a human, personal level for me to type those words and then to have him bring it alive. And one of the scary parts is he goes, okay, Paul, you have to direct me. And I'm like, I'm a documentary guy, and you're this big star, and you want me to tell you how to do a line reading? And he goes, Paul, it's your movie. You tell me how you want me to say these things. And, you would think he'd come in and go, okay, I've got 15 minutes and I'll tell you, he collaborated, he works together. He wants to hear, and he goes, it's your movie. But he also then brings a legitimate, deep passion and respect for these athletes. He rides a motorcycle. Like, he knew more about the sport than I did. I mean, he rides a bike. I've ridden a dirt bike. I crashed a couple times and I quit. So when he talks about it, he has the passion and the understanding, and it comes through. It's not just hiring a voice and an actor who's acting. He's speaking from his heart, and it's pure giving for him, because he doesn't, like I said, he only does it because he respects these guys and he likes doing it. So I couldn't say enough nice things about it.
That
And
that
by the way, the other, he's also has a lot of fun doing it. He really enjoys it. Hey, by the way, I would also say, if you only, he just came out with a book called From Under the Truck. And if you want to read his life story, he's just been talking about it. And I would highly encourage people to read it, because if you really get the sense of who he is as a person, he's a super nice guy, and he likes to have fun too.
that's amazing. I have to put that book in my reading list. I love reading stories from anybody that let it be the industry or let it be a historical figure. I love reading their stories. So I have to look for it like that. I can have it in my reading list. So Paul,
I have another funny quick story about Josh. A number of years ago, I was working on a surfing movie, and I went, and this is how my relationship began. I paddled out at my local surf spot in Malibu, and he was in the water surfing, but I was too nervous to talk to him. So I went to my partner, who's also my wife, Susan Cooper, and I go, Josh would be the perfect person to narrate this movie called, later became Hawaiian, The Legend of Eddie Aikau. And she called the agent, and he goes, no, you can't, And he goes, Josh doesn't want to do voiceovers. He literally wasn't doing voiceovers. I go, no, he's got a great voice. So he did that one movie, and he was so wonderful. It's actually led to a whole parallel career. And he likes to joke about that it actually, has opened up a whole world for him, and we've become friends ever since.
That's amazing. And how will this film, in the case of the fans, because with the previous interview, the fans went comments about Jimmy, comments about the film. What do you think the fans will take away from this film?
It's a good question. I think, and what I really hope is, there's a passionate base of fans in Supercross, and I think they know how great their sport is. They know how dangerous, how challenging, how it starts as a young kid and how you work your way up. And I think these fans, my hope, and again, I'm the filmmaker. It's up to, I don't get to save people's reaction. It's their reaction, and I have to sort of, accept it. But my hope, and what I think they'll go, is that, hey, someone gets why we love the sport, that this is a love letter in many respects to the intensity, the challenge, the dangers, the drama of the sport. And they're going to sit back and go, this is the sport that I love, and they will enjoy it. And then hopefully people who are not fans, even if they never watch another race, will say, you know what? That's not just weird guys on motorcycles running in circles on dirt. These are real athletes at high stakes. One of the misunderstandings is, it's got a motor. You ostensibly there's a seat. So how hard could this sport be? And you know what? Their heartbeats are 180 to 200 beats a minute. That's more than a boxer. And in boxing, every 3 minutes you get to take a rest. These guys race for 20 minutes, 3 times, 22 minutes. And they don't get to take a rest. And this bike is moving. They're using their biggest muscles in their body. And mentally, you make a tiny mistake on a Supercross track, which is so technical and has the jumps and the berms and the whoops and the tabletops. It's an amazing sport. And I think they're going to go, someone finally told our sports story, which really, as a cinematic experience, had never been told before.
No, yeah. It's one of the main things that I liked about the film is that every shot felt like you were there, and that's amazing. It's very rare to see it in documentaries, especially because documentaries normally it's just one narrative and that's it. But Pay Dirt feels different, feels unique, and one of the things that I love about it. And going with that, Paul, you have interviews with legends, you have interviews with people that have worked on the sport, but I think that where you take this documentary to a more personal level is with the privateers, the ones that don't have sponsors, the ones that go there for that chance, and as well the amateur league where you have kids getting into the sport. How was it interviewing these privateers, and as well talking to I would say with the parents and the people that work with the amateur league. How was it working with them? How did you feel, knowing that this is not only like, hey, we have these people that have sponsors and have worked with these big companies, or let's say, for instance, in other sports like football and baseball, that if you don't make it to the high leagues, that's it. You don't only play the sports for fun or become a coach. But in this case, you do have people that try and still try and make it. How did you feel about their stories, and what you think that people will take as well, like knowing that, hey, you have a chance. If this is something that you really have passion for, you still have a chance to make it big.
Yeah, I mean, to me, it was like when I discovered, I actually raised a professional soccer player, my son, and I thought I
Okay.
had a pretty big commitment. I drove around and we went to hotels, but when I came into this world, both in terms of the privateers, it shows the passion for the sport. You can't go in the NBA and play in the daytime out in the parking lot and then go end up on the floor. These are guys who are not making money. They're paying their own way. They're working their own bikes, and there's many of them. And we told one particular story which encapsulates what's going on. And then the other thing I didn't realize was that in soccer, which was the world that I was in as a dad, I paid for some cleats and a ball and a couple of uniforms. If you want to start in Supercross, you have to buy a motorcycle. You have to have a mechanic. You have to buy tires and oil and gas and so on. The level of commitment that starts at a young age is really unparalleled to any other sport that I know. So you have two different things you're talking about that are related. It's about you starting young, and the amateur national champion is called Loretta Lynn's, based from the old country music singer. It's not amateur. These kids are being scouted as professionals at 4 and 5 years of age. And by the time they're young teenagers, they're signed to contracts. So the dreams are so big, and the hopes when they go to this national thing, they're not just there to win or wear a title or get a trophy or get a ribbon. They're looking for careers at a very, very young age. And being exposed to that world, that passion of the parents, and it's got its ups and downs. Some of those parents are pretty intense. They have a lot invested. So finding that world was like opening up. Like I couldn't believe. I thought as a soccer dad, I knew, what the role of parents. But here it's even more in depth. There's more money. There's more chat, and it's more dangerous. So all those things all feed into what makes Supercross unique. And then you look at these privateers chasing dreams. I mean, we all, and if you think in your life, your dreams, you can see how deeply committed they are. And it's fascinating to watch. It's like a subculture nobody knew, I didn't know existed. And as a filmmaker, that was really exciting to be able to showcase that and to share with people. Here's real passion that still exists in our world today.
That's amazing. And wanted to ask Paul,
Mhm.
this is your upcoming documentary. Do you have any other passion project or any other topic or sport that you would like to touch and bring to the big screen in the future?
I'm working on a few projects. That's the nature of my business. You have to have plates spinning. But the project I'm most excited about right now is about a female big wave surfer named Keala Kennelly. And she was a pioneer in the world of big wave surfing and had to overcome personal depression and mental issues and coming out as a gay woman in a world that didn't accept her back in her era. And so her struggle is both amazing, riding 50, 60-foot waves, and also a very internal story of a woman in a man's world who had to make her way and deal with all these struggles. So I found her very inspiring as an individual, and I hope to be telling Keala's story on the big screen.
Oh, that's amazing. And Paul, this would be my final question for you today. If you could describe Pay Dirt, the story of Supercross, with one word, what would it be?
Passion. It's about passion and commitment. There's two words. But it's like, if you really feel you want to be a champion at something, if you have that passion and that drive, you can succeed. And you may have to pay a price. There's a toll. But if you're willing to pay the toll in your life, you know what? You may or may not make it. But if you try hard, you just might.
Amazing words. Paul, thank you very much for giving us the time to talk about Pay Dirt, the story of Supercross. Hope everybody enjoys it and the fans as well. And I hope to see you once again here and talk about another of your projects.
It's been about seeing it on the big screen is a way to see it. And if you go paydirtthemovie.com, click on screenings, you can find a theater near you. Paydirtthemovie.com.
Thank you very much for that information, Paul. See you later, and we'll see you in the next one.
All right. Thanks a lot.